So I'm back at college. Got to see a guy get a blowjob right in the party. Helped a guy that I didn't really like fix his transmission. Didn't like him because of the way he treated his girlfriend, really. And I liked his girlfriend, so that didn't help. And I got one really tough semester. I'm going to take two classes that are supposed to be, one's a prerequisite for the other, but I'm going to take them both in the same semester. I've gotten my approval, and so now I can take 21 credits. I then sign up for the two classes and find out that the time schedule for them overlaps. So I talked to the two teachers, and they do agree to allow me to leave the one class early every other day to get to the other class on time. And then on the opposite day, I stay for the first class the entire time, and I show up at the other one a half hour late. So I'm taking trig and physics all in the same semester. Now, neither of those classes are real difficult for me. I can't say that the trig one I understood a lot, but I just knew if you see this, you do that. And as long as I remember that, I passed the tests, and I never cared about scores except that I passed. So I was getting along in those two. Not really, though, enjoying them. I tell you, the physics class I would have loved to had, on its own and not be cramming like this. It's not the way to go, that's for sure. And in my major, I'm bored. I'm just totally bored. This stuff is so easy and it's so basic for me. You have to realize I built a set of rocker arms, with equipment that was so antiquated it was ridiculous. And so now here I'm in a modern shop. I got every tool under the sun. I can build anything. And I'm sitting there making a scribe or I don't even know, or step blocks or something like that. And I'm not even getting to the finished part of it. I just make I just rough them out. Next semester I get to actually finish them to their final dimensions. So it's not even tough at all to do this stuff. And the teacher finally comes to me and says, "What can I do?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, I can tell you're bored." I said, "Well, give me something that is actually needed, at least. It can be simple, but at least needed. So if there's another department that needs something made, let me do it." And that's what he did. I got to make things for other departments, and so I felt a little better about it. But then he also, so now in the middle of all this guy and his girlfriend are not getting along, and he hits her maybe a couple times, I really don't know, and he says he's leaving her. And I happened to be there at her apartment right after that, because that was a place we went to party. And I ended up getting in a discussion about it with her, and I don't know whether it was that night or a couple nights later, we ended up having sex, and she ended up being my girlfriend. So fuck him. He wasn't happy, but on the other hand, he stayed away. He let it go. I was surprised because I thought I'd get the crap beat out of me. That's what I figured, because I'm a wuss when it comes to that kind of junk. And as this is all happening, you know, I'm starting to, I guess, do drugs more. I'm not really happy with myself. I'm struggling to find peace, you might say. I find that the only time that I'm really comfortable is on the road between college and home and college. For 3.5 hours or so, I'm at peace because nobody can touch me. And whenever I'd get to either destination, I couldn't wait to leave. It just was that way. It was bad. My mental state was really off, even though I was dealing with things that at both ends, which seemed reasonably well that I was handling them, but I really wasn't. I knew my parents weren't going to give me the time of day, so why bother? Actually, in that time, my brother and I decided to make a major purchase. And because Tawnytown was dry and we needed to help, somebody had to do something, and so he found a connection down at University of Maryland that he used to have, and this guy said, yeah, he had plenty. It was just cheap Mexican, but you know, it'll do. So we go down there on a trip in my car, which, another story. We're going down there in my Camaro, and he's driving. Now, I don't know, I know why, because he knows where he's going. And we get to this one section of road where it goes to, you know, 4 lanes, 2 each way. And there's a car that pulls out, so he drops over to pass this car, and for whatever reason didn't see until the last minute 2 trussels sitting in the road that were staggered. The first one was to the left, but still in his path, in the path of our car. And we were beside this guy, and I just said to my brother, Steve, you're going to hit the fence, you know. If I get a call from my wife, I got to answer, because she just keeps ringing and ringing and ringing. She won't stop. Anyway, another wasted couple minutes of my life. Well, at least it got me closer to the end. I'm now a couple minutes closer to the end of my life. Anyway, we make this deal. We are driving down there. He gets over real tight to the car. Now this guy's like not paying attention. He doesn't realize that we're in trouble. And so he misses the first trussel, and he's over there right up against this guy's car. And now he's facing the second one, which is staggered to the other side. So now he's got to make a left-hand turn, and like really quick. And my car has really skinny tires on the front and fat tires on the back because it's for drag racing. I set it up that way. And he turns that steering wheel, and I'm thinking, Steve, we're going to hit the fence. And the car turns, and then he turns it back the other way, and we dart through that little opening and never hit anything. And I said to him then, my car can't do that. And here we are still side by side of this car. And so I just said, step on it, you know, and he stood on it, and away we went. We ended up buying 2.5 pounds of Mexican, and this guy had it in a trash can, and so he just dipped it out and weighed it, and we bought some hash. I can't remember how much. I want to say 1.5 grams or something, but it was a big chunk. You know, it was like that big, about 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch thick. So I don't know how much that is, but it was, at least we got something of quality out of the thing. So we go home with it. Well, about 2 nights later, we're out on a back road partying like we always did. And partying means we just sit there, listen to music, and get all smoked up. And I have all the pot in the back of my car, and he's in his pickup truck with a friend. And I said, well, I'm going home. Because, see, I actually was responsible. I had, you know, if I had to do something, I made sure I got up in the morning. 6 o'clock every morning, I'm up. I leave, probably 10 minutes later, he gets busted. And they had like 4 or 5 cops out there. But he didn't have hardly anything in his truck. And the biggest loss of the whole thing was the friend had built a rat pipe, is what we called it. And it was about a 6-inch, 8-inch long rat, the body. And it was just carved out of wood, and it looked like a rat. He painted it gray and everything, and stuck a bowl right in the middle of its back, and the tail was the hose that you sucked on. And he lost that because of the cops. The funny thing was, after it was all over and Steve got his truck back, I was looking in the glove compartment, and here there was a small chunk of hash about that big that they didn't find. So we had that experience there. Then back up at college, I lose my girlfriend. She comes to me one day and says that her old boyfriend's been talking to her. And he swears he's changed, and that he won't be like that anymore. And for some reason it didn't bother me too much from what I can remember, but maybe it did deep down inside. And after talking to her a few minutes, I didn't scream and holler. That wasn't my style. I learned how to scream and holler later, once I had a wife that screamed and hollered. So we broke up, and I had been staying in her apartment a fair amount. And one of the last things I told her, besides the fact that he wasn't changing at all, I mean, people just don't. And even though I was, you know, fairly young, 19 years old, I knew for sure this guy was going to, you know, do the same things again. And so I told her, I said, well, here's the deal. He's not going to change. And once you realize that, if you decide you want to come back, you're going to have to kiss my ass. Because I'm not putting up with that kind of bullshit. I don't know, maybe a month later, I'm over at Sicky and Booker's. I'm going up into their room in that house, and I open the door, and there she sits. And there's a couple other people, standing around, and I'm looking at her, and I already know what the deal is here. I know that she's realized that he's still a creep and that she was wrong about him, and that's fine. You know, we learn. That's seemed to be the way I looked at it. And I just said something to her, so it didn't work out, huh? She said, no. Then she had a shit-eating grin on her face. And I went over, I got a beer, and she said, I'd like to come back. And I said, well, you know what you got to do. And she smiled and said, yeah, I know. And I just got up on the chair, pulled my pants down, bent over. I stood on the chair to make it easy for her. And she gave me a nice wet kiss on each cheek, and we were fine from then on. So that's how that worked out for us, and we went back to being a couple again. Sometimes I wonder if she wouldn't have been the one I should have stayed with, but that'll be another story, I guess. Now back at college, I'm still struggling. You know, it's just not that much fun, and having the two classes together isn't bothering me too much. But here in this semester, they brought in a brand new CNC mill. So this is something that's brand new. I mean, of course, and CNC has barely gotten off the ground at this point. In fact, this machine was built by Bridgeport, and they actually didn't even have the manual finished yet because they didn't know what it was going to do. They didn't know how to tell you to program it exactly. And I was fortunate. I got to be the first one to play with this thing. Now, when I got to play with it, it didn't have the computer part of it. It was just NC, numerical control, which meant it had a tape that ran through it, and it could only handle a certain amount of the tape at a time. So everything was on the tape, and the tape has got a bunch of holes punched in it, and you punch them in on a flex writer, they call it. So we're trying to drill and tap two holes, and this thing will come over and start to do the tap, and it won't finish it. I don't know how many different tapes, but because I don't have the C part of it, the computer numerical control, the computer part of it's not in it, so it can't store information. I can't make corrections on it except by retyping the whole tape. I made tape after tape after tape. Now, I didn't mind too much because this was interesting, and some things, you know, we got right, and some things we didn't, and it was a challenge. I learned a lot about, you know, G-code and things like that. So, finally we found the answer. We called them up multiple times, and they finally figured out that what was wrong is that even though we called out a location for the part to move to, that same location, either the X or the Y, one of them, had to be called out again, even though it was already there. And if you put that line of code in, then everything worked fine. It tapped the holes. It did a beautiful job. It was great to have that kind of challenge in front of me. Now, again, why me? Why the girlfriend issue? You know, why is it that I have these two friends, and why do I connect to them, but I can't connect with anybody in my class? They just don't make sense to me. These two don't really make much sense to me, but at least they seem real, you know. So anyway, next time we get into the heavy stuff. So, talk to you then. Spock out.